never saw the cards being charged.
Good for you. So if they send you to jail,
Videos you have on.
There you go. I knew I could.
Over 500. Yeah.
Are there individual pictures or
Yeah, usually me working on paintings or illustrations.
good on you?
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
I hope it brings you a lot of business.
Thank you. Yeah, it hasn't yet, but
Well, give it time. You know,
Yeah.
I saw you doing this one.
did you?
and, Yeah.
Excellent.
It is excellent. It's good. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be back in just a minute. Thanks for. So if you're here under the witness protection program, just don't say anything. I won't scan the camera, so your anonymity is safe with me. And if you want to, I don't know why anybody would, but if you want to go hear this again, God forbid, you can do so when you go home and watch it on YouTube, or maybe pass it on to somebody that you think needs a little punishment. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Manmohan, for your gracious introduction. Now, I do really need, since he brought that up, anybody here, maybe 5 years ago, that was here when I did the presentation, Huggers, Muggers, and Shruggers? Any repeaters? Do you think so? Yeah. Let me explain that very briefly then. When we, people, Americans, let's just stick with Americans or Westerners.
Include Indians.
And yes, that's right, including our beloved imported Americans. When we walk into an art museum, the modern section, not the old traditional spot, but the modern section, you know what I'm talking about, right? There's three responses. One is the huggers, the people that just love this stuff, okay? There are some of those. You don't know any, but there are some. And then there's a bigger group that's called the muggers. Now, one meaning of the word mugger is not to beat somebody up, but is to pretend, to act, mugging for the camera, pretending, play acting. There are a number of people that pretend they like that stuff because they want to be viewed as intelligent, with it, cool, and so forth, okay? Then, listen to this, the other 98, and I think I'm being conservative here, the other 98% of the population goes, what the heck? I don't get it, right? Want to get a witness?
It is getting better than 90.
Yeah. So, that was, but I gave that talk several years ago here, and many people have passed away since then, so. So I did tweak the title, and here is what I want to talk about tonight. Do we have any more outlines left? This is so, bless your heart, you can take it home, again, because you might have a bird cage, and the bird cage needs something in the bottom of it, so you can do this for that. There is an awful lot of fine print here, I admit, because I really wanted to cram this all onto just one page, so get out your magnifying glasses. And part of the reason, part of my teaching strategy is, if it's written here, I don't necessarily need to say it. Does that make sense? Yes. So I'm certainly not going to stand up here tonight and read through this. In fact, some of you smart people have already read through the entire thing. You can leave. Right? Now, if you want this, you've got it all. Let me talk about the title just for a minute, and I'm going to start with the broad, big picture. First of all, the word multiverse. Any science geeks here, you know what multiverse is? Okay, it's a astronomical, people study outer space. It's the latest theory that the quantum and physicists and all have come up with to try to explain why we're here. Their theory is, which by the way, and they say we can never prove this. We can never, ever prove this. So it's completely taken by faith. They say there must be millions and billions and trillions of other universes, and most of them were flops. We just happen to be lucky, and we hit all the numbers right. That's why we're here. Okay, so it's a statement of faith. But the concept. I mean, when you and I grew up, there was a universe, was there not? Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but now the scientists say, oh no, there's many universes, and you can't get in a rocket ship and go from one to the other. It's like on a completely different channel, okay? But I thought that was a pretty good analogy. I've had this conversation many times with my fellow artists, and I'll even limit this to my fellow full-time professional artists, people in Raleigh, who's, if you know some of the artists in Raleigh, names that you would know, who are full-time artists, and I will query them, usually gently, about, what do you think about, the modern section of the North Carolina Art Museum? Or, what do you think of the stuff in CAM Raleigh, Contemporary Art Museum? And even from my fellow full-time artists, I usually get something like, whatever. So, there are some people that are content to live with whatever. I'm not content to live with whatever. And a big part of I've had a very circuitous, am I saying that right? Anyway, a wandering career path. And among my hobbies are history and philosophy. And I'm a historian philosopher who happens to paint, in fact, more than I am a painter who philosophizes. My actual, authentic, internal person is more along the philosophical line. So I'm not content just to shrug and say, whatever. They usually say something like, to each his own. And, well, I just can't live with to each his own. I have to understand stuff. So what I'm going to attempt to do tonight, and by the way, thank you very much, all of you, for helping me to write one of my books, because I've been working on this book for years, 5, 6, 7 years, and it's about 400 pages thick. And tonight's talk helped me just a little bit more, straighten it out, line it out, and get it clear in my mind what it is I want to say. In fact, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, the black boxes at the bottom are one thing that I've never, ever done until this week when I'm preparing for tonight's talk. And that is to go through each of these categories of art and say, well, what's good about this category? And then possibly, well, what's a caution about this category? Okay, so thank you very much. I feel like that's a huge step forward in my writing of this book. Don't ask when it's going to be published. It's been 7 years and counting, 400 pages and counting. But the book is about, basically, Huggers Muggers, about the modern art world. It's not going to be a love fest. There's plenty of professors. Turn to any art professor in any university and you'll get paroxysms of delight over 20th century art. Likewise, you can turn to the internet and be inundated with, is it called screes? People that write, it's bad. There's tons of that in the internet. So I'm trying not to do either one. I'm trying to give a fair and balanced, logical, cogent picture of what in the heck happened in the 20th century. Okay? So tonight, however, I'm not going to dwell or maybe even touch on the history. I'm not going to talk about how we got in the mess we're in. I'm just going to talk about the mess, not how we got here. And I don't really mean it's a mess, but I think there are 5 major universes in the art world. And the reason I'm using universes is they don't have to intersect. In other words, an artist like myself, and perhaps like many of you, and many of you who come to our Tuesday night critique, we live in this column right here, mostly. Now, Manmohan, he lives here. Where are you? Okay, I got to pick on him a little bit. He lives all over, but most of us live here, and we can live in this universe perfectly content and never really have much to do with all these others. Got it? Now, I know you know this, because when you walk, now how many of you have been in the, let's say, the modern section of the North Carolina Art Museum in the last 10 years?
Today.
Oh, okay.
Today.
Yeah, the last 10, today!
Today, we were all there today.
Okay, well, when you go into that museum, you are interfacing, you're responding to people who live in this universe. And they could care less, they have nothing to do with, they don't ever want to see this kind of art. Necessarily, for the rest of their life, they could be perfectly happy just living here and not anywhere else. Are you with me?
Who they? No, who they?
Yeah, we'll get there.
Who is the they you're saying?
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. All I'm doing is trying to line up, there's these 5 separate universes. Okay? Then there's a bunch of people that live here, don't have to go anywhere else. And here and here. Now, I will tell you right at the outset, let's start with the easy last 2 categories. I have almost nothing to say about art as therapy, except that, it's kind of therapeutic for everybody who does it. I'll say that, okay? But other than that, I'm not an expert at therapy. I do have a really dear friend who did a woman, kind of a motivational speaker woman, experienced trauma, experienced PTSD, and in the process of getting herself out of PTSD, took up abstract painting, and then now is teaching it to veterans who are coming back with missing pieces and so forth. So hooray, and she's a very dear close friend, so that's been exciting to watch. But that's all I'm going to say about therapy. And then likewise, the second last category is recreation. I'm not going to say much about that, except to say, again, for anybody who ever picks up, how many of you, at least you pick up a brush or a pencil or something and you take a whack at producing art? At least that much. Okay, I'm assuming that's most of you. And then a few spouses who come along who got dropped. How many spouses got dragged here? If I can keep you awake, I'm doing well. We're going to be talking about art. Well, a bottom line to all of us who ever pick up a paintbrush or pencil, charcoal to draw, if you had a good time doing it, that's good enough. And that is so foundational to my art philosophy. If you had fun doing it, good enough. Doesn't need anything else to happen. Okay? And that's the bottom line. Now, there are a number of us who that might be the bottom line, but we don't want to stop there. We want to get, kind of good, sort of good, real good, whatever the case may be, right? It is the first two categories that I'm going to talk about the most, because these are the ones where most of us, and I will describe who the us is as it becomes appropriate to do so. This is where most of us live. But while I'm going backwards, let me go ahead and take care of the third to last category, which is creativity focused art. Now that might sound like, I thought all art was creative. Well, by the way, if you think all artists are creative, you're happily, naively mistaken. By the way, a lot of what I say, everything that I say tonight, let me just confess right off the bat, everything I say tonight is well-reasoned and insightful and correct until 9:01.
And it's gospel.
So I've thought about all this stuff a lot. That part is true. I have thought about all this stuff a lot. It doesn't mean it's correct, but I'm going to give you my opinion. And I'm going to do that without apology because I feel like it's more beneficial to you and certainly more entertaining if I tell you how I really feel than if I kind of play all mealy-mouthed like, everybody's good, everybody's good, everybody's good. I'm not going to say everybody's good. I'm not going to say everything's good because I don't think it is. Now, that sounds kind of dangerous. I'm just going to be dangerous tonight, okay? So if you don't like my opinion, Mom Mohan's looking for a speaker for next month. So you can get up and review the guy last month. He was crazy. Now let me straighten. That's what you can do next month. Okay. But all artists are not creative. By the way, I walked into something not too long ago. It was like it wasn't an MFA show, MFA, Master of Fine Arts degree, which is the terminal degree in studio art. That is to say, you can get a doctorate in art history, but you can't, as far as I know, you can't really get a doctorate in studio art unless somebody's invented one somewhere. But traditionally, the MFA is the terminal degree in this arena. Well, I walked into something like an MFA show, and so I'm kind of a, character, kind of irritating SOB sometimes. And I just rolled my eyes because the stuff that I saw on the walls was virtually identical. I can't say how accurate that is. Identical to the stuff that was on the walls when I graduated from college in 1977, 41 years ago. Identical! And artists have the reputation of being creative, but let me tell you what most artists are. Most artists are so busy following the herd, they really don't get very creative. Now, if you want to take that as a slap, but no, take it as an exhortation. Be one of those that breaks out of the herd and do something creative. Now, this column right here is people who think, maybe, sort of, that this, again, they don't have to know that anybody else is out there. Some people actually live there. They think that art is all about creativity. That's all it's about. Just woohoo! Let's do something new. Okay? And I give you here what I think are some of the good things about that and some of the bad things about that. First, in summary, an untethered creativity is chaos. Creativity without structure is just an accident waiting to happen. And it's okay if some people want to spend their lives creating accidents, that's fine. I'm not here to judge them. But will they ever create good art? It's highly doubtful. I'll just say that. Highly doubtful that they'll ever create anything of real moment or significance in the art world because their creativity sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes it's just there's no anchor. So they're like a ship with the sails up and no rudder. Just, woo-hoo! It just goes wherever the wind blows. Okay. Now I want to talk about the two main categories, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. Now I mentioned earlier, before some of you got here, yes, this is all my artwork, and it's here just to confuse you. It's here to keep you off balance. It's also here to give you the impression, you people at the back can't see what's here. So if you want to stand up once in a while, I'll pick things up as we go along. But one of the other things it helps convey to you is like, I think it's fair to say I do a wide range of stuff.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I usually, when I'm usually talking to people, much younger than I am, and I say, that's because I'm old. And I've been an artist for a long time, so I've had years, decades, honestly, to try this and that and this and that. It's also partly because for many years I was an illustrator. And here's the life of an illustrator. Ring, ring. Hello, this is Dan. This is ABC Advertising Agency. We need a picture of a rabbit as an engraving tomorrow. Can you do it? And of course, as the artist, I can easily say, you're nuts. Or, you'll pay me money? Sure. So I do an engraving of a rabbit tomorrow. You hear me? Ring, ring. We need a portrait of the president of the bank in pastel by the day after tomorrow. Sure thing. So that's the life of an illustrator. And that explains a lot why I've worked in such a wide variety of styles and mediums. It's not what you recommend to people who are going through college. You say, no, you got to find one thing and stick with it. And that's kind of sort of true. And by the way, I when I was an illustrator, I did have, in fact, a native style, if you will. I did have one style, one illustration style that I marketed. And I'm sorry about the reflection on this. This is actually the illustration that I finished last week. It's like a throwback for me to my previous life. This is pen and ink, and on 3 layers of mylar.
Yeah.
It's drawn on the front, back, front, back, front, back. So it's 6 layers of drawing, colored ink, which is actually not ink, but liquid acrylic. And I'm going to produce actually a high-quality edited version of me doing this for a YouTube video that's going to be called Pen and Ink Cross-Hatching State of the Art, because that's what I think it is. So this was what I marketed. There's another one here. Yeah, there's another one here that applied to a cartoon. Basically the same thing, just not as many layers. So I do have styles that I advertise. Nowadays, and all my Tuesday critique friends know this very well. I'll show you a painting. In fact, you lady, anybody who was there, look at. I took the big black box out of it.
Oh, you did.
And I took the reefs off the.
Yes.
Then it's been hard.
It's nice to know that he listens to us.
Oh yeah. No, there was a magazine rack here, and my critique group last Tuesday. By the way, if you're not a part of a critique group, you're not growing as fast as you ought to be growing. And if you want to be a part of our group, if we get so big, we'll divide it into 2. Give me your business card or your email address. Second Tuesday of every month at Resurrection Lutheran Church in Cary. We used to meet at a gallery. It closed, so we went right down the road to the nearest place, which was happened to be a church. So it's not a church function. We just are used graciously. They let us use their building. Anyway, this is my style. This is what galleries sell. So that means whenever I make something like that, I have no idea what to do with it. I had a lot of fun. Thank you very much. It's over here. Had a lot of fun. I would love to sell it someday. Not for $50. Whenever I do a watercolor, this is a building in New Bern, and this is just for fun. I did a video of me January, a year and a half ago. I did a YouTube video of me painting this and talking about why and what and wherefore and so forth. But none of my galleries sell my watercolors. Too bad. So that's just for my own entertainment. And sometimes. Now, on the other hand, this is for money. Can you tell it's for money? Yeah, because it's boring and straight lines, right? They used to rule it. And that's exactly what they wanted, and that's what they paid me for, so that's what they got. But I got paid for that one. Anything else here that I need to point at right now? Here's another, again, this is a painting I finished yesterday, and then actually touched it up and signed it this morning, or this afternoon. I started this in a class last Thursday night at Jerry's Autorama and finished it yesterday afternoon. So I'll talk about, where does this fit in here? That's what I'm going to talk about. But that's enough for now, just sort of a quick introduction to what I do. So let's talk about, first of all, this category. And here, I'm going to get serious and passionate because I have opinions on the subject. First of all, I'm going to give you my definition of art. And every time I say that or say this, I imagine my professors turning over in their graves. Yes, most of them are dead. And someday I will be too. And I will wonder what my students are going to say about me. Anyway, I have a definition of art, because that should be, the people in this category go, oh, there's no such thing as a definition. But there is, and here it is. After decades of deep philosophical conjuring, extensive research, and reading of other people, here's my definition. Art is stuff that's made to look at. Period. I like that.
Very deep.
Okay, very deep, very deep. Gets deeper as you go along. Now, some shallow thinking person would say, oh, well, I mean, street signs are made to look at, books, pornography, women they're made to look at, signs, doors, doorknobs, everything's made to, no. Okay, wait. Definition. Art is stuff that's made to look at, period, without any secondary auxiliary purpose. It's just stuff that's made to look at. That's what I believe. So by that definition, in fact, none of this qualifies. And this is where most of the art establishment universe lives. And I deny, to some degree, that what they're even doing even can be defined as art. I'm correct until 9:01. Until the next month when somebody comes and disagrees with me. Are you okay? But I'm going to give you my opinion. That's it. Art is stuff that's made to look at, period. Good art, it's getting worse. Good art is stuff that people like looking at. Which is really, which I will confess right off the bat is a cop-out answer. That's what do you call it? A circle? Anyway, there's a fancy word for that. Anyway, besides a circle, escapes my mind right now. But that is it is, and what is uncanny, I could go on a long tangent, I won't, but I'll take a real short one. There are some myths in our culture that are so universally spoken that most people think they're true. Here's one, and I'm going to give you a couple of them right off the bat. This is not on the outline. Number one, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Spoken by a true non-artist who is ignorant as a brick wall. Okay? What is astounding, and I would pull on my compatriots, the anthropologists, to back me up on this. What is astounding is the degree to which all human beings in all cultures and all times consider the same things beautiful. That is what is astounding. Now, inside there, is there a little wiggle room for subjectivity? Of course. Of course there's subjectivity. You might like this one a little better and that one a little better, right? We can look up here and say, well, I like that one and here's why I like that one. Nevertheless, what is amazing is the degree to which all human, look at they tear down the pyramids or whatever. I don't know, they don't tear them down, do they? They go inside with flashlights and cameras and they take a picture of those hieroglyphs, and any middle school art teacher would be able to point out with no over exaggeration the elements of design and the principles of design demonstrated on the Egyptian hieroglyphs, even the cave paintings of Lascaux. The reason our jaw drops, I've never seen them in person, but the reason our jaw drops open is because a human did that. So obviously a human did that, and a human that had all kinds of the same sensitivities that we do. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to chase that down. So that's myth number one. Myth number two is art is self-expression. Virtually an unheard of concept until the Armory Show, New York City, 1913. Before that, virtually nobody in Western society thought that art was self-expression. Let me say that again. Before the Armory Show, New York, 1913, virtually nobody in Western society thought, oh yeah, art, that's about self-expression. And that is, everybody go like this. Now, you're an artist. I must express myself. Yeah, thank you for not doing that. We'd be carrying somebody up with on the way to the chiropractor. Anyway, those are two myths, and that was free of charge, and that was not on the outline. Now, I'm going to try zeroing in on category number one. Art is stuff that's made to look at. This black line here is primary skill set required. The skill set required to operate in this universe is, guess what? Artistic ability. You could say that's slightly snobbish, because these people would say they have, some of them would say they, and I'm denying them that. They have their right to say they do, and then I have my right to say, no, you don't. And by the way, there is ever so slightly, maybe not as slight as I'd like to think, there's a slight tiny bit of arrogance in me. Because I can produce this. And I can approach virtually every art department in America and say, I probably essentially have more art skill in my little finger than you have in your whole department. Arrogant. So let's thank you, Lois, for reminding everybody to turn off your phone.
I did.
And by the way, I'm sincere as I can be. No shame, no blame. But I will shame and blame the next person whose phone goes off. So let's all take a minute right now and pick up your phone and turn it off. And I'm as sincere as I can be. I mean, I've been that person more than once, so if you have any doubt, pick it up and turn it off. And there will be a shame and blame. I'm kidding about that. But you'll be embarrassed, won't you? Okay. Real artistic and drawing. And you know what's funny? Even the people who are big, what I'll call modern art, for short of a better term, modern art purveyors, when they talk to children, they know, the children and they know what art means. They know what artistic skill means. You have to go to school for years and years and years and essentially get an MFA before you're as lost as a goose. Okay? And yes, most people with an MFA, you can talk about this later. Most people with an MFA are lost as gooses. They have been educated beyond their ability and intelligence. Anybody here with an MFA? You can come and argue with me later, and I'll be very nice to you and so on. But yeah, it takes you a long time to go to school to get common sense beat out of you. All the rest of us know what art is. We know what art ability is. You know what I mean by art skill. I don't have to define it. Everybody in the room knows what it means, right? Unless it was a room full of the MFA students, then we'd have to, we'd get all contorted and could talk for hours and hours and hours about all kinds of things. But you know what I mean by that. Here is the first major division, and I'm calling it eye-focused art. That means art is stuff that's made to look at. It's eye-focused. With me? In that, I've divided it into two major categories. Representational, that means it's a picture of something, and non-objective, or what most people call abstract art. A lot of times, what we really mean is non-objective art. I have a couple samples of it here. Down here is an abstract painting. Here's another one, and I should have had this so I could pull it up quickly. Again, view in the back. So this was done a couple of years ago. I enjoy this kind of stuff very much. And there's another one on the back. This one goes, I don't know. Which way does it go? I signed it there, so it must go that way. But it could go that way, couldn't it? We have this discussion often, don't we, on our Tuesday nights. So which way does it look better? Anyway, that's non-objective or abstract art. And I'll talk about that more as the evening goes on. And by the way, I don't know if you're catching this or not, I am putting this kind of stuff, non-objective, what most people call abstract art, the technical term is non-objective. That means it doesn't have an object. There's no apple, teapot, flower, naked woman in here, okay? It's just a line shape, color, design, texture, and so forth. And I'm putting this stuff in this category, Okay, so let's get straight. First of all, a lot of people would think, oh, modern art, you're kind of thinking that's over here. No, it's not. Because what have I labeled this over here, by the way? What have we called? Not eye-centered, eye-focused, but what? Mind-focused. Ooh. Okay, we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Over here is all the art, in my opinion. This is the way I divide the art world. It's my opinion. There are many others, of course. This is eye-focused art. That means we're focused on what it's stuff. It's made to what? Look at. Okay, which includes abstract as well as representational. Now, one of the little goals I have for tonight is for all of you who are artists, which is almost everybody here, to, number one, be encouraged. Number one, to be able to walk into any museum or any gallery and not have the I feel like an idiot feeling, okay? Because you can go, huh, that's what they're doing. I kind of have an understanding of what they're doing. It's not what I'm doing, maybe, and you can either like it or dislike it. Doesn't matter, but at least you'll be able to fit it together. And I'd also like you to be encouraged that whatever kind of artwork you like to do, there's a legitimate place for you at the table, at the drawing table in this case, okay? So, two categories, stuff that's pictures, stuff that's not pictures. Now, for most of you in the room, now let me just for fun, who does, and somebody mentioned this, you I think, does mostly or exclusively abstract, that is to say non-objective art? One, two, good. Yeah, some. And yeah, how many of you dabble in it sometimes? Okay, good. How many of you are comfortable going both ways? You can do pictures or you can do non-pictures. Okay, very good. And I affirm that enthusiastically. As you can see, 2 summers ago I did 220 abstract paintings in one summer, which is a lot. And these are 2 of them. The ones I showed you, these are 2 of those 200 and some. Okay, but most of us in the room, by your own raising of hands, most of us are actually going to fit in these 2 columns right here. Okay, you're ahead of me already because I'm talking too slowly and you're reading ahead. Number 1, so I have A and B. A, representational art that is primarily a picture of something. Right? And some of my Tuesday people, we know who we are, right? And B, representational art that is primarily an object in and of itself. In other words, it's a painting and it's representational. It's a picture of a fire truck. It's a picture of a fire truck. No, actually, this is not a good example because, well, if you look at the back half of this fire truck, it's very abstract. But if you look at the front half, it's very realistic. So which one is this? Both and. There are some paintings that are like this, clearly pointing very focusedly, very intensely at a thing beyond itself. This is pointing to a fire truck, right? Let me pick up one of the paintings that I picked up earlier. This is also, everybody can tell this is a boat? What kind of boat, generally speaking? Fishing boat? Is it a shrimp boat? Do you think so? Yeah. Exactly. Well, I want to talk about if you will, the contrast between these 2. Under A, it's a picture of something. I am including realistic and hyper-realistic paintings. And also, by the way, it gets complicated, doesn't it? Also, stylized pictures, but the quote-unquote picture of is still the primary focus. And here's an example of Charles Weiss. Anybody know who Charles Wysocki is? If you do jigsaw puzzles, you know Charles Wysocki. It's one of the most popular. Okay, it's sort of like Grandma Moses, pastoral farm scenes with completely whacked out perspective. Like everything is just front on. A barn, a horse, a stable. You know, it's not all in perspective. It's quaint, it's cute, it's fun, makes for a good jigsaw puzzle. Okay? But even though it's not really realistic, you don't look at Charles Wysocki and say, oh, look at those brushstrokes. You don't. You look and say, oh, look at that horse. Look at that barn, and so forth. And by the way, most cartoons also fit into this category. They are very stylized, but you don't look at a Far Side cartoon to look at his masterful strokes. You look at it because it's the most ridiculously funny cow with big eyes, and that's what you look. That's what you laugh at, because it's a picture of something. So, are you with me? It gets a little complicated. There's realism, and by the way, so here's one of my realistic paintings. You can come up later and see this up close if you want. This isn't, I wouldn't call it hyper-realistic, because in order to get to hyper-realistic, you have to be copying a photograph, which is, by the way, one of the little criticisms I have of hyper-realism. It's actually hyper-photorealism, or hyper-copy of a photograph. And there's this weekend. This was done from a live. I set up all this stuff next to me and looked at it and painted it. So I can't possibly do hyperrealism because I'm not copying a photograph. I could get into more detail why that is literally true. But it's pretty darn realistic, right? And I entitled this one Learning How to Draw, because everything in here is all about the tools of art and so forth. So I do realism sometimes. I can't sell it. I can't sell it for what it's worth, because I've got, 40 hours in this dang thing. So according to my calculations, it has to go for at least $4,000, and nobody's going to do that yet. Come on. We have grandchildren living in our house right now, in our home, which is a hoot. They've been there a year, which is a hoot. And my 7-year-old grandson says, Big Up. He calls me Big Up. Big Up, are you famous yet? He asked me that again tonight at supper. He said, did you get famous yet?
Did you tell him yes?
No, I said, not so anybody would notice. So in this category, let me give you some examples of artists, and please understand, I'm doing this in each category. I could give 100 artists, but I just, in no particular order, I say Thomas Kincaid, picture of stuff, right? Andrew Wyeth, watercolor. MC Escher, picture of stuff. Most people don't look at MC Escher to say, look at his composition, look at his light values, look at it. No, look at that weird staircase. Are you with me? It's picture of stuff. Peter Bruegel, the elder, and so forth. So again, in no particular order. Now, real quickly, and you can you have phones, you can Google all those people. Okay, so I didn't bring a projector and show you. You can do it yourself. Here's some pros and cons about this kind of stuff. Number one, pro. That means here's what's good about this. Needs no explanation. Everybody can understand it. If I put this up on Facebook, or if I put this in a gallery, nobody comes along and goes, I don't get it. They just don't. They just go, wow, look at that. Okay? Number two, and I do want to affirm this, when an artist produces super realism, I'll call it that, not to confuse with hyperrealism, which is a category. When an artist does super realism, it indeed creates a strong sense of empowerment in the artist. For that reason, I say all of you who are artists, you ought to do whatever you need to do. Project, of course. Trace, of course. That's what the big boys do. And the big girls. Trace, whatever. Every artist ought to do one. Why? Because then nobody can do it and run around you critically saying, like, you're not very good. You just do that sloppy stuff. More than that, and I think this is a valid form of pride. I don't think it's arrogance. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think it is. I think it's authentic pride. When I look at this painting, when I'm doing this painting, there's this sense that goes, dang, I'm doing it. Now, please understand. I mean, I very rarely do this kind of stuff. You understand? And for what it's worth, I didn't project on this one, but that doesn't matter. That's another story. I spent a lot of time, tweaking, getting everything just right. I would guess 40 hours. So that's quite a bit of time on one little 60 by 20 inch canvas. But I'm kind of proud of that. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I would love many other artists to feel that same kind of pride. It's not just people like me, or not just me. Everybody should have that sense of like, I am good. Because it gives you a real sense of empowerment. And that most artists don't struggle with overabundant egos, do they? No. Most artists struggle with, right? Tuesdays. Well, it's not really good. Okay? And we keep trying to beat that out of them, but
It doesn't work.
it doesn't work. So, most of you can do with some little good ego boost there. So one of the things I recommend is, again, project, trace, do whatever you want to do, but produce it. It could be really tiny, it could be charcoal, it could be pencil, but just do something that's really realistic. You'll be happy that you did it. Expect it to take a long time. Trace, project, whatever, again, because that's what many all illustrators do.
I refuse to do it.
Say that again?
I refuse to do it.
Yeah. Manmohan won't do this, but that's all right. He's a different category. He's a category. Okay, so that's the pros about doing realism. That again, I'll get one, two. Number 3. It can exacerbate OCD issues. Now, let me tell you that these number 1 and 3 down here, which you can already read. This is the first time in my life I've ever said this out loud. What has kept me from saying it is, and my wife and I have talked about this quite a bit, we like to be nice people. My wife and I do, believe it or not. And we like to be nice to people. And we like to think happy things about other people. And because of that sweet, wonderful impulse of ours, we have many times throughout our lives cut off the discernment that we're really getting. Do you know what I mean? We're getting messages, we're getting vibes, we're getting impressions, but we're going, no, it's a negative impression, I'm not going to receive that. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And that's kind of dumb, because the impression that we're getting is actually authentic. And now that we're 60-some years old and we've seen this get confirmed over and over and over and over again in our lives, it's like, you know what, we kind of knew this person was dangerous, you know. Even though they were putting a nice face, we could discern that they were dangerous. So we're in our later years, we hope to have many more late years, don't get me wrong, but in our later years we're going, you know what, that discernment was right. So I'm telling you some things right now that I've never said out loud before tonight. And it is, I'll go to number 3. The tendency to do this kind of art can come from an authentic lack of personal freedom. Okay? To create, and I know I'm going to, okay, let's just get one thing straight. I'm an artist. I have a style. I like my style best. Okay? I'll just confess that, okay? So, and that style is this. That's this style. Now, as you can see, this isn't my only style, so I want to say that, right? That's pretty obvious, right? This is not my only style. This is my chosen style because I believe it's the best. And I don't mean this exact style, but when I paint, especially when I'm painting big, like Manmohan said, especially big, I've got big brushes in each hand, and I am doing cartwheels, and I am painting, and I'm moving sort of like a dancer. He wasn't far off. I'm jumping and swooshing, and I'm making movements like this, and it has come to dawn on me late in life that there are certain personalities that just are not going to paint that way. And it's because somewhere in their youth or childhood, they were damaged, squashed, broken by who knows what, usually family issues, right? And so they're more like,
A little better.
are you with me? Now, none of you are like that. But you all know artists that way, right? And there are people that do hyperrealism, and by the way, I love all our hyperrealists, that like Jim. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yes,
Oh my goodness.
yes.
Or David Stickle, who some of you don't know and some of you do know. Wonderful guy. And he's hyperrealist, and every time I talk this way, I think the ghost of these friends is in the back of my mind. Yeah, you think you're so smart. But there are a couple of friends of ours that are really, really good hyperrealists. But there's some people that paint that way, and by the way, some people that I do know that you guys don't know, that there's no question in my mind, and it breaks my heart, because they're very psychologically constipated, if you let me use that word picture. And they paint hyperrealism because they can't break out. They're not free enough to break out. And I know this to some degree because I think it was true to some degree of myself. in decades past. Okay, there really there were several times in my life where I had breakthroughs and broke back into the freedom of childlikeness. As you know, in my world, becoming an adult is a very mixed bag. Because becoming an adult becomes a grumpy, judging mind, all that kind of stuff. Some of you are familiar with that kind of talk, and that adult is not a good thing. Childlike is a good thing, and some of us do need to paint more like children. Now, again, I'm not naming names or pointing fingers at anybody in particular, but if I encourage everybody, paint free. Paint as free as you can. And even if, again, doesn't mean you have to always paint free. You can come back to your hyperrealism if that's, because this does make you happy. And I know it makes David Stickle happy, even though I like to see him cut loose. And David Stickle is exactly this tall. I've measured. He's 6'7", and he does hyper-realistic watercolor. 6'7", he paints with little 2 hairbrushes like this. And his paintings are beautiful, and he wins awards all around the world. He just won one in Italy 2 weeks ago. Love him. Don't want to be him, but love him. Okay, so have you got that? That category. Now, that's category A. So under I-focused art, representational. 2 kinds of representational. It's mostly about the picture itself. And then B, here's where we're going, the paintings that are not about the picture as much as they are about the paint. Now, when I teach painting classes, which I do quite a bit, I am, no apology, I am always trying to steer my students into this column. Now, of course, you see, artist example, Rembrandt, Franz Hals, John Singer Sargent, Richard Schmidt, and me. And I am not crazy enough to think that I belong in that company, but I had to let you know that's what I do. So the difference between these two, do you see it? This, it's about the picture. This, it's about the paint. Oh, there is a picture there, sure enough, but it's about the paint. This is not just about paint, it's about the composition and the texture and the lightness and the darks and the value that's light and dark. It's about all the abstract elements of design. That's what it's about. Let me pick up again one of my paintings that I finished today. This is a picture of a what? Any problem discerning that that's a boat? No. Okay. By the way, somebody else, his name escapes me at the moment, I'll think of it later, calls this style, calls his stuff abstract realism, and I grabbed that, said it's a perfect description of mine. It's abstract realism. You can tell it's a boat, I hope. I mean, it's not really any issue. But you can also tell, something's weird about that boat. First of all, it's not extremely realistic, right? It's not this. Are you with me? Right, it's not this. This, sure enough, it's a picture of a boat, but it's not really about the boat. The boat is just there as an aid, as an excuse for slapping light, dark, color, edges, textures onto the canvas. Does that make sense? Here, the boat, same thing over here with this. I only brought 2 of my, this style of painting of mine. Same thing here. Sure, it's a painting, a picture of what? City Street, Fayetteville Street to be exactly in downtown Raleigh. You don't need to know that. But it's a city street, clearly. But it's not primarily about the city street. It's primarily about light, play of light, edges, sharp, soft, light, dark, texture. Are you with me? It's all, the city street is just an excuse to slap all the other stuff. Now I'm going to take just a minute to tell you why I think this is the best form of painting. Okay? And I say that, you can see that I'm not stuck doing this because I can do, so to speak, anything I want. Okay? So I'm not doing this because, well, that's all I can do. I'm doing this because it was a conscious, mental, or intellectual discovery that that's the best kind of painting. And again, the ghost of David Stickle is in the back of my mind, and all my other friends who do glorious superrealism. My apologies to them, but I believe the impressionistic, not impressionism, that's Monet and so on, but impressionistic stuff is the best. Here's the main reason why. Because with hyperrealism, I have done all the work for you. yea, verily, about 40 hours of fussy, tiny brush detail work. I did all the work, took me about 40 hours, right? You don't have to do anything to look at this painting. You just go, golly, dang. He sure did spend a lot of time. That sure is realistic, right? And of course, we all feel that way. That's when I look at Dave Stickle, I've mentioned too many times already tonight. When I look at his stuff, my jaw drops. I go, golly, that's amazing. Okay, but here, I've done all the work. You are passive. When I pick up a painting like this, now let me pick up the other one. No, it's not that wet. When I pick up a painting like this, you have to become engaged.
Yeah.
And like one of the most obvious examples is here. Do you think those are people? Yeah, you probably do. How many saw those as people?
Yeah.
But guess what? Especially the closer you get, the more unpeople-ish those marks become. Are you with me? Your brain had to go, buddy. Oh, those are people. It probably didn't take that long. You understand? But sometimes it could. I don't know what else here. I mean, you see that's a flag. You can see these are cars. That's pretty realistic. Light posts, trees, and so on. So, windows. This is a good example up here. How many of you saw those as windows? Well, of course. If you looked at it all, you go, yeah, those are windows. But again, the closer you get, you go, those aren't windows. Those are just crazy marks that your brain turns into windows. Get it? So you are actively, mentally engaged with the visual part of your brain. The visual cortex of your brain is actually going, buddy, processing stuff. It's like pictures in the clouds. Remember, we all did this as kids. You lay on the grass and you look up at the sky, or lay on the concrete, whatever. You look at the sky and you say, oh, look, it looks exactly like an old man eating an ice cream. Let me ask you a question. Does it look exactly like an old man eating an ice cream cone? No, not at all. What is happening? Your brain is connecting the dots, okay? Now, listen to this. This is really a key concept. That activity of your brain, or my brain, connecting dots. When the dots are connected, a little drop of joy juice gets released in our brain, and we experience that as aesthetic pleasure. Okay? I know I'm using analogical language here. But when your synapses are synapsing, there's electricity going, you're engaged with the picture. And when you get it, you go, those are people. Zing. And I believe that is the single largest slice of what we call aesthetic pleasure, is when our brain connects the dots. Let me use one other analogy real quickly. I mentioned that we have grandchildren living in our house, and we love it. It's temporary. And I'm loving the opportunity to be a daddy again, granddaddy this time, which is way easier than being a daddy. And a lot more fun. But all the kids, of course, love to watch TV. Like all kids, right? They love to watch TV. And that I've told them, since the day they moved in, that when you watch TV, it turns your brain into milk. So now when they come to me, they don't say, we watch TV. They say, can we turn our brains into milk? Last week, I was in my studio painting, and they love to hang around while I'm painting and so forth, and sometimes I let them. And I found on my phone, a dramatic interpretation reading of a famous piece of literature. Almost children's literature, not quite. It was a real stretch for them. But they were sitting there while watching me paint, kind of, but listening. It was a very well done dramatization. I had it plugged into the speakers in my studio. And they were sitting there, they were sitting there like this, right? Tell me, what's going on in their brain while they're listening to this good story?
They're picturing it.
Yes, they're picturing it. What's happening when they're sitting watching TV? It's a very different look. Right? See, watching TV, the viewer is completely passive. Nothing wrong, by the way. I watch TV because my brain goes 100 miles an hour, and I need to do something to put on the brakes. So the stupid box is one of the best tools there is. I can overdo it like anybody else, but it's a really good tool for relaxing, right? And I need it. Reading doesn't work. I just get all wound up when I read. So if I want to be stupid, turn my brain into milk, I turn. But that's a really good analogy. When you look at a painting like this, your brain's turning to milk. I've never said that before. Right? Because you're passive. You don't have to do anything. On the other hand, when you look at a painting like this, I believe, at least to some degree, your brain is engaged. So you're getting smarter and you get aesthetic pleasure. Bzzing gets released in your brain. Okay? So that's why I believe in this. When I was converted, which by the way was pretty quickly, about 15 years ago, long story, I won't give it to you, but it was pretty much on a dime. I decided to change. And up until that time, I'd been painting exactly like this. Here's the way I used to paint. So this is, and you can see this already, but let me bring it over here where it's going to look a little bit more. Now, okay. That's as far as it's going. How many like this painting? Good, thank you. You don't know whether to say yes or no. I like this kind of painting. I call it storytelling art. It's still very fun to me to do. Now, it's different from this, isn't it? This is realism. This is about the picture. This is also about the picture, but it's certainly not realism, is it? But it's real. It's realistically portrayed things, right? And again, I call it storytelling art. And it's fun for me. Now, evidently, I can't make a living to save my life painting this way, so I don't do much of it. By the way, just to let you know, if like tomorrow some big publisher got a hold of me and said, "Oh, Mr. Nelson, we love your storytelling art. If you would do one of those every week for us, we'll pay you $5,000 or $10,000." I would do it. I would. In other words, I would prostitute my art. Are you kidding? I would do this stuff on the side. But I would gladly do this for 4 or 5 years and become a millionaire and then do whatever I want. Okay, so I just want to let you know, I'm not proud, I'm not a snob. I love doing this kind of stuff. I don't think it's as good as that. Because, why? Because your brain isn't engaged. Now your story brain is engaged. By the way, let me tell you an interesting story behind this painting, since I have just 30 minutes more. Number one, it has my signature down here, and it has the date, which I don't usually do. I don't date. It's the year 2000. I finished this painting 18 years ago, and it says number 1. This was the very first oil painting that I ever finished.
Really? Wow.
Now, I had started several others before this, but this is the first one that I finished. And back in 1999, I was involved in a street painting competition in Raleigh. I don't know if you've ever seen or been a part of a street painting competition. Great fun, where you do chalk on the street. And I won. I actually won every year for 5 or 6 years in a row, and then I quit to let other people win. Let me. That sounded really arrogant. Let me explain. Here's why I won. Well, first of all, they used to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was 3 days of painting before they did the judging. I got there first. I stayed all day. I had a generator that powered a great big bright light. I worked till 3 o'clock in the morning. Got back and relieved the security guard at 7 o'clock in the morning. Worked all day. Worked later than the next. In other words, that's the reason I won. Okay? Because I put in like 3 times the hours, 4 times, 5 times the hours that everybody else did. And there's just, I'm not bragging exactly, but I do like to tell young people, and there aren't a lot of young people in this room tonight, but I do like to tell, if you want to be a good artist, you work your buns off. That's what you do. You work harder than the next guy or girl. That's how you get good. Anyway, so I won, and there was my image was a lot like this, and a man was there. He was in his 60s. He had a girlfriend. She was the president. She was the sponsor of this event, and he thought it would be nice if he would pay me to do a painting for his girlfriend. And so he paid me $3,000 to do this painting, and I gave it to her and him, and he gave it to her. Now, this is we're getting, by the way, to the second category with the story. It just so happened, and I hope nobody here knows this person. She's a friend now, by the way. I mean, she's always been a friend, but she still is a friend. She was the president of the Raleigh Arts Commission.
Okay.
Can you see where this is going?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me, did she like this painting or not?
No, you got it.
Not at all. In fact, I saw it not too long after. I can't remember why I was there, but I saw it, and I saw this god-awful frame that she put on it. And I could tell what she thought about it by the $47 frame that she put on it. And again, she's a friend. But no, she really didn't like it at all. Now, why do I have it? Kind of good news, bad news. Because we got reacquainted 15 years later, and she said, you know that painting you did for me? I never liked it that much. I said, really? I'm kidding. I was really nice. I kept all my sarcasm carefully ensconced inside my body. And she said, would you consider trading? Anyway, I don't want people out there who have one of my paintings that they don't like. So we actually did a trade. Now, ironically, she likes my new stuff. Go figure. Even though she was the president of the Raleigh Arts Commission. So, hallelujah for inconsistency. But anyway, but this is really kind of funny. And again, I won't tell you who she was. And if you guess, I won't tell you if you guess right. She is a friend. But she was the president of the Raleigh Arts Commission, which, yeah, you're right. You understand where she's coming from. And she said to me, well, I've never really been very religious. Forgive me a moment of stupefaction. I went inside. I said, what are you talking about? And then some other time she said, well, you know, that Mary and Joseph thing. And again, my jaw, what are you talking about? There is no Mary and Joseph. There is a bent over old man leading a pack mule with a pack on it, not a woman. You can come and look at closer. Here's what was really going on. Is because of her subculture, because of her art establishment subculture, she couldn't really even stand to look at it closely enough to realize that she wasn't even looking at it carefully. She's like, ew, I don't want to look at that. Which is a sad introduction to the second category I'm going to talk about, okay? Which is mostly characterizes the art establishment. And she is a friend, and I was, by the way, quite happy to get this, my first ever oil painting back, and it was, you know, it'll be willed to one of my children or grandchildren. They'll be happy to get it. And they had jolly well better put a better frame on it. Okay, so did we get the, we didn't do the pro and con, did we? Okay, but it's pretty self-explanatory. What's good about this? I've already said the strongest aesthetic triggers, I think, happen in this category. That's a bold statement. I'm sticking by it. I know I might be wrong. That goes without saying. I know I might be wrong, but I really think these are the strongest aesthetic triggers. The negative, it's an overcrowded field. Many people do impressionistic work because they lack the skills to do realism, so they settle instead of pushing toward excellence. Let me give you another broad category that's not on the outline. It's a concept that I call aesthetic splashback, or to use Reagan's, it's aesthetic trickle-down. When any of us go into the art museum, you don't have to go into the art museum, you just have to take an art appreciation class in elementary school, middle school, or high school, or college, or whatever. When you're faced with contemporary art, and of course, being ordinary people that don't have an MFA, you're frankly appalled by the ugliness of it. It's like, but I guess they know what they're doing because they have MFAs, they have master's degrees. I guess they know what they're doing. Okay, I don't believe that's true, by the way. Anyway, you're amazed at, really, a blue square? It's not square. That museum, you know what I'm talking about? Just flat blue. You're amazed. So then you go home and you're trying to paint an apple or a vase of flowers. And face it, you're a beginner. You're not very good. So you paint it. You don't like it that much either. But here's what you think. I guess if the good artists in the world like this crappy stuff I saw in the art museum, who's to say I'm not a genius? Are you with me? So I call that aesthetic splashback or aesthetic trickle-down. And I think one of the sad effects of the ugly art establishment art, one of the sad effects of that is that it has really dumbed down our whole society. And if you study any history, in fact, if you read a Jane Eyre, am I saying that right? Novel? Did you read a Jane Eyre novel? All the women that, you know, in her day, it was fiction, of course. It was novels, of course. But it was reflecting reality. All the women in her day were expected to be able to draw a realistic facsimile portrait of their boyfriend. All of them. You were not a good girl unless you could draw a good picture of your guy.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
And there's all kinds of examples of that. Back in the day, if you will, and I didn't live in the day, but one of my hobbies is history, people were a lot smarter. They didn't have TVs, first of all, so their brains weren't turned into milk quite as much. And they just assumed, if I'm going to paint, doggone, I'm going to paint good. It's going to look like something. There's a website out there that's called Stuff That Looks Like Stuff, Painting Stuff That Looks Like
Yeah.
Stuff, right? Good. It's a wonderful title. I've looked at it several times. Good stuff, fun stuff, but brilliant title. Painting stuff that looks like stuff. And before the 20th century, that's what everybody did. So that is, in fact, one of the beefs I have with the age that we live in. And because the 20th century, the explosion of the 20th century, by the way, which was not all bad. I'm going to get to the good stuff here of that movement, the good things about it. But it wasn't all good. And one of the bad things is it kind of dumbed down our culture very, very much. Okay, how about, abstract. I didn't do this at all yet. Do I need to say, I know you can read it. I do need to talk about this. All right, let me go fast. Although this stuff is non-objective, and that, again, please understand that this would be a surprise to most people. Essentially, I'm calling this first category good art. This second category might be good something, and it is good something, but I don't call it good art. Okay? So I know that's like, ooh. And by the way, if you don't think that's ooh, let me tell you, let me just confess right up, that I am disagreeing with essentially every art professor in every university in the Western world. Who do you think you are? Well, I'm not the only one, for one thing. And there is a strong, small minority, but strong backlash against the university art system. But I'm going against virtually every art council, the City Raleigh of Art, City Raleigh of Art Commission, the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts. I'm disagreeing with them. I'm disagreeing with virtually every art professor and virtually every museum. I mean, what chutzpah, right? Let me just confess one part of arrogance. Yeah, I've already said it, that there's a degree of truth here. When I walk into the said art department, I have more skill in my little finger than most of them have in their entire department. Artistic skill. Oh, they have skill, all right, but it's not artistic. Okay, so I do confess, and I'm saying that's not good on my part. It may not. It's probably not, and it's not technically true. I don't think that. But yeah, when I was an art student, I had more drawing skill than any of my professors. That is true. Okay, and that's not that unusual, by the way. If Picasso had gone to college, he'd have been the same way. And Picasso took another path. It's another story. We'll talk about him slightly. But although this category is not objective, it reflects, in my opinion, this is Dan Nelson's opinion, it reflects the authentic realities of the cosmos. Okay? So we don't have to get religious, spooky, or even transcendent here. We can stay just completely secular, scientific. But I think the cosmos is so obviously balance, contrast, emphasis, movement, pattern, rhythm, and unity and variety, which are the principles, the classic principles of design. Okay? And just to make sure I got those right, I just Googled them. You can Google them too. The principles are elements of design and principles of design. These are the principles. Do I say here? No. Okay, let me give you an example of, you all believe the same thing I do. You believe that the order of the cosmos is self-evident because we recognize this order in a heartbeat. Look around at this room. Look at the ceiling. Look at the intersection between the ceiling and the wall. Tell me, is it or is it not straight? Yeah, pretty straight. I don't mean like to the micron. I just mean it's straight, right? If on this wall right here, halfway along, there was one of these panels, whatever they're called, that was going like this, everybody in the room would go, that ain't right. Right? Much more so if it was built that way. We go, what in the world? Now, let me, a real close analogy to that. All the people that make their living over here and say things like there is no order in the cosmos, here's a funny proof that they're talking through their hat. They literally do not believe what they say. Let me pick one example, Damien Hirst. He's in here somewhere. Damien Hirst, right here. He's a living artist over in England, the shark in formaldehyde. Anybody know the shark in formaldehyde? Or take, what's her name, the girl, maybe she's over here somewhere. Tracy Emin, anybody know Tracy Emin? Y'all aren't really big on the modern art, are you? Okay, her most famous piece is Unmade Bed. Guess what it is?
An unmade bed.
It was more than that. It's her unmade bed, one particular morning when she got out of it with sheets, soiled sheets, cigarette butts, and other things much, much, much too intimate and yucky to mention in polite society, right there in the bed. And she said, she has an MFA, of course. This is my artwork. Very famous, uber famous, ridiculously famous, okay? Tracy Emin. Now, she is also now, because of that, she's fabulously wealthy. And any artist in this category who becomes, listen to this, any artist who becomes fabulously wealthy, tell me, what do they want to buy? What do they want to do with their money? Buy stuff, right? What kind of stuff do you suppose they want to buy?
Junk.
No. What kind of stuff do they want to buy? Do they buy? No, they don't like good art because they have an agenda there. No, houses. What kind of houses?
Mansions.
Mansions? No, mansions. Maybe modern.
Apartments in New York.
But what do they? But listen, if Tracy Emin were to buy an apartment, and she could certainly afford an apartment in New York, and she walked in, and the crown molding in the living room was, would she have a cow or what? Absolutely. If these wealthy artists buy a car, you know good and well that car had better be what? Perfect. Thereby completely belying their official artistic philosophy. Yeah, entirely hypocritical. Once they become wealthy, they buy, what do they buy? They buy beautiful, listen to that word. This is a word that they detest with every fiber of their being. They detest the concept of beauty. They would rather poke ice picks in their eyes than look at things beautiful, artistically. But if they become rich, what do they buy? Beautiful stuff.
They're nouveau
Absolutely.
riche and they have to flash it.
Well, yeah, that may be so. But the point is they violate their own stated artistic philosophy by buying beautiful stuff. Because they, in fact, do know what beauty is. And they do believe the cosmos has beauty in it. And their art is trying to say, we don't believe in beauty. There's no such thing as beauty. We don't believe in order. We don't believe in order. And yet they'll go and put down a lot of money for a really orderly car. Okay? Just something to think about. Okay, let's talk now about this. This is the most important line in this whole second category. Mind-focused art. By the way, how perfect. This is, in fact, the perfect description of modern art. Now, when I use the word modern, I don't use it the way the ordinary man on the street. Ordinary man and woman on the street says, ooh, I've got the latest, greatest modern watch, phone, car, a lot of modern gadgets. Modern in common vernacular means the latest, greatest thing. That's what it means on the street. When a philosopher uses the word modern, that's not what they mean. What they mean is a very particular worldview, started officially by, anybody remember who? René Descartes, yeah, 1575, 1580, something set in his oven, quote unquote, and said, cogito ergo sum, are you with me? I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
Okay, that was the official start of modernity, and it's lasted for 500 years now, 400 and some years, and modernity basically reduced humanity to a brain on a stick. We are an intellect, and that's basically all. We are rationalistic. Now, modernity was good, better than what came before it, because what came before it was all kinds of goopy, spooky, superstitious gobbledygook, right? So it was good. The scientific method came from modernity. Rationalism came from modernity. The Industrial Revolution came from modernity. Dickens, Upton Sinclair came from modernity. Ooh, World War I came from modernity. The Great Depression came from. Okay, are you with me?
Yes.
So it's like great promise. Oh boy, it didn't turn out so well.
World War I and II.
And we happen to live in an age right now where modernity is fast draining out of our society. Everybody our age, we were raised on modernity. All of our kids, when you give them perfect airtight Aristotelian logic about something, they say, whatever. Now, on one hand, they're correct because they're saying, I don't buy, Mom and Dad, I don't buy your worldview that all I am is a brain. Because I know I have intuitions, creativity, imagination. There's all kinds of mystery. There's all kinds of things in the cosmos that we don't know about that modernity doesn't answer. So that's modernity. Modernity is all about thinking. Okay? By the way, let me be sexist but real for a minute. All of you women should have been raising hell about modernity. Because you should have been saying to the men in your life, Well, I don't care if you can say all this smart aleck stuff. That's not the whole picture. Generally speaking, it's a bell curve thing, but generally speaking, more women are more intuitive than more men. Are you with me? Generally speaking. And you can argue with me about that if you want later. Okay, so mind-focused art. How perfect. That is a perfect description of modern art. Because modern art is about what? The mind. Are you with me? It's about thinking. So here's the description. I had a dear friend of mine who taught at SCAD, Savannah School of Design. He's very smart guy. And he said, well, to me, he was a professor. He said, well, art is communication. How many think that sounds pretty innocent? Like, sounds good to me. Just one problem. If art is communication, then what are you going to do with your art? Communicate. And if you're a communicator, then what are you? A communicator? Or an artist? You're a communicator, because you just said art is communication, and that's what I'm all about. That make sense? Okay, I'm going to let that go because I'm running out of time. So this results in, here I'm just going to fly real quickly, this results in protest art. I'm going to skip all, you can read all the rest of that. Angry art, MFA art, which I talked about, pushing the boundaries or redefining art. What's his name with the urinal? You know. It's down here somewhere. It's all about Marcel Duchamp. It's all about redefining art. That's what this crowd is, just gaga about redefining art. Why? Because this crowd is modern. Now, by the way, let me insert that for a philosopher, the word modern is now synonymous, by the way, with old-fashioned. So I don't know if you get that or not. If you're a philosopher, modernity is old passing. It's going away really fast. So modern is not the latest, greatest. In fact, now we're officially, technically, in some kind of postmodern. We don't really know what that means, but okay, because it's too early to tell. But modern is old-fashioned. So these are definitely modern artists. Okay.
That's like the 50s. What's the modern?
1907 to today. Yeah, the 50s. Yeah, more than 100 years. So anyway, where was I? Pushing boundaries, shock art, you've heard of this, honest. I should talk about this for a minute. When someone produces excessively unattractive art, I mean really ugly, like if you saw their painting on the shop room floor, you would dump your trash on it just like everybody else, because you wouldn't be able to distinguish it from the other trash on the floor. How many of you know there's a lot of art like that? A lot of art. If you saw it in the dump, you go, yeah, of course. And if you had to take a dump, you wouldn't feel bad taking a dump on that art, because that's what it looks like to you, honestly. Okay, so the establishment calls that honest. They call that honest art. What they mean is it's ugly, and it's true, because the hidden message is that the cosmos is ugly. And of course, you can already hear overtones of what I'm saying. Of course, they're secularists, of course. They're gloomy, pessimistic secularists, which I believe you could be a positive. I think if you want to be really happy about something, think, in the secular arena, let's just think about evolution for a minute. Doggone, it's amazing that we're here. If we got this far, we stand a pretty good chance of getting further. Are you with me? I mean, that's just thinking like an evolutionist. It's a miracle we're here. Now, if you happen to be creationist, that's all right too. It's still a miracle that we're here. Are you with me? So you can't do an end run around me in that regard. I'm happy in both camps. Do you understand? Woohoo! I can't believe we're here, but we are. Woohoo! This is amazing, and we're likely to survive. Well, I'm not getting into all kinds of philosophy and stuff, but ugly art is. They call it honest. Oh, this is authentic. This is really honest, because the cosmos is screwed. And this artist shows how screwed the cosmos is.
Isn't that more like saying man is really a kook?
Yeah, and
absolutely. And man is the one who is false.
That's right.
Not the cosmos.
Yeah, right. So just I hope you understand that. By the way, I got too many parentheses in there. Investment art. Okay, I can't. Investment art. The art critics. There are, Washington Post. There are big dog art critics. A bunch of them are dead now, so they don't know what they think now. Art critics determine who is art, which artist is in, which artist is out. You ever wonder about this? Like, not too long ago, Michael Basquiat, the black kid that died at age 26 in New York, sold a painting for $173 million, right? The highest ever paid for an American painting. 26 years old. Anybody look at his art when it came out in the news? How many went, boy, that's amazing? Yeah, maybe you did. How many thought, that is ugly. If you saw it on the floor, you would walk on it because you would say, it's trash. That is what you would say, probably. Unless you knew Michael Basquiat, then you go, oh, it's worth millions. Because it is. But why is it worth millions? Simply because the critics say it is. So then a very few multi-millionaires line up and obediently buy it at Sotheby's, Christie's, Lloyd's of London, okay? Now, the great majority of that kind of stuff, though, the great majority of that is purchased by tax-supported entities like museums, municipal art councils, including the NEA, and universities. And I know this is really kind of nasty and provocative, but I believe it's true. This modern art world, quote unquote, might not survive without taxpayer support. That is what keeps the whole art establishment afloat. The museums, the municipals, and the universities are what keep the stuff that, when you look at it, you go, what keeps that stuff afloat? Your tax dollars. Okay, now, I might be wrong about that. I know that I might, but I think I'm probably not. And I'm a pretty, yay, free market kind of person. And I don't want to get into politics other than say free market, yay, I'll go that far. Okay? In this category, let me start with the non-objective. Because this is what most people think of as modern art. Is non-objective, mind-focused art is usually marked by a studied avoidance of beauty. Okay, I mean, it's amazingly rendered to avoid any semblance of anything nice at all. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just because you're ignorant about this category, and that's all right to be ignorant of this category, but all you have to do is start making some visits to the art museum and you'll be educated very quickly. This is called honest or raw. And the art that reflects order or beauty, here, listen to this. Art that reflects order or beauty is considered naive at best or deceptive at worst. In fact, the head of the art department at UNC on public radio many years ago said, all art is a seduction to a worldview. She was so negative, so dark, so twisted in her spirit that she considered every art suspiciously. It's a seduction. You're trying to tell me, Dan Nelson, you're trying to tell me that the cosmos is good. I'm not buying it. Okay? That's pretty much a pretty close paraphrase. Head of the art department at UNC, probably 10 years ago, she's still there now. Okay, here's a bunch of examples. Oh, here, I'm over here. Here's a bunch of examples. Anybody know Kazimir Malevich?
Yes.
What did he paint?
White.
Yeah, white and black. Black square. His most famous paintings are white square and black square. And guess what it is? A white square and a black square. That's all. That's all. No, that's it. That's it. And it's really funny because they try to put these in the books, in the art books, It's hilarious because you can't see anything. It's just a black square or a white square. Anyway, and by the way, 1912. So how old is modern art? 1912. Brother Casimir was painting black square and white square and saying, take that, you artist. Okay? And again, now let me say something really quick. That it's not funny place. It's not black and white. None of these people are easily categorized. If you go into a modern art modern section, you can look at some and go, well, I don't know about this one. And I'm the same way. It's not easily. Like I say, in this category, maybe Jackson Pollock. Were his drip paintings gorgeous or were they ugly? I don't know. I can go either way. I can say, well, I see intelligence there. I see composition design. Or I can get grumpy on and go, it's just a bunch of spilled paint.
That's all it is.
And
I've seen it. That's all it is.
Same thing, Robert Motherwell, except he did one better. All his stuff is black and white, just black blobs. Okay. And locally, okay, is Jason Craig here? Okay, locally we do have one superstar in Raleigh in the art world, and his name is Jason Craighead, and he's much younger than I am, and he's very famous in Raleigh, and he's the darling of the art establishment. In fact, he's now officially on the Raleigh Arts Commission. I don't know if he's the president of the Raleigh Arts Commission, but his artwork is amazingly, and he would not be offended by this, amazingly ugly. I mean, you wonder how he can produce something so devoid of order. I mean, your 3-year-old literally accidentally produces more order than Jason. Now, you don't get that ugly accidentally. You have to be really clever, for one thing. So he is exercising some intelligence. I skipped over this. The kind of intelligence that is needed for this world is personality and socio-political savviness and sales. You really have to be able to sell yourself. Because you're selling this stuff that is ugly as crap, and you're saying, I'm brilliant. And if the people don't believe you're brilliant, they're not going to buy it. Okay? So Jason, I'm sure you would be afraid if I knew him. I've never met him.
What's his last name again?
Craighead. That's right there. Okay, now, and we'll end here. I know we're almost on time. Under mind-focused art, what else would modern art be but mind-oriented? Are you with me?
Yes.
Two major categories: abstract, non-objective, and representational. Now, ironically, though, the non-objective mind-focused art is the most logical outgrowth of the philosophical underpinnings of modern art. Are you with me? In fact, what was his name? Greenberg? Clement Greenberg? Is it Greenberg? Clement Greenberg, the mountain around which all the art critics of the 20th century are mere foothills. Clement Greenberg, New York Times, I believe, New York anyway, but New York Times, is the mountain of, if you want to think of a critic of all critics. This was one of the things that really bothered him about the art world, is that he was saying, yeah, modern art. And he's saying, come on, you guys, everybody should be doing non-objective stuff. That's the only thing that makes sense. Now, no picture. Everybody should be doing, and it bothered him that people like Picasso kept on doing pictures, because they really weren't fully converted. They were like half-breeds. Do you understand? So he's kind of irritated by that. And then what happened is, way before he died, lo and behold, a great majority of the population of Western civilization decided that abstract, non-objective art was really actually quite nice. And he lost his identity, because he was supposed to be a voice in the wilderness, man against everybody else, and all of a sudden everybody else started saying, yeah, we kind of like this stuff too, right? I kind of like, even Dan Nelson, even that nice Dan Nelson guy who can do this, likes abstract, and it just doesn't work in Clement Greenberg's galaxy, okay? So he really, I don't know, he must have died a very disillusioned man, because he lost everything to be mad at. Two things. One is that the good artists didn't obey him, and they kept doing pictures like Picasso. And the other thing is, all the rest of us went, I think we're right. We do like abstract stuff. Now, I don't know if you do or not, but okay. So over here, ironically, though, everybody in this philosophical framework ought to be doing non-objective stuff. A whole bunch of them just can't quite make the jump, including the biggest dog in the whole pound, Picasso, who his entire life kept doing pictures of stuff. Now, abstract pictures of stuff, of course, but nonetheless, pictures. The other thing I want to say is that representational modern, it is the half-breed representational modern art that has engendered the most reaction and outrage in Western society. Okay, so the stuff that really makes most of us irritated is actually not the black or white square or the abstract stuff. The stuff that really irritates us the most is the stuff made by George Rock. No, his stuff's beautiful. Marcel Duchamp, Willem de Kooning. I don't know if there's any de Kooning fans in here.
Yeah.
But again, look at his women series and think, this man didn't like women very much. True. Francis Bacon, angry, twisted man. I mean, you can't say anything else about him. I mean, you can't deny that the man is angry, and he just basically had temper tantrums on the canvas. Same thing with Willem de Kooning. Andy Warhol, not so sure. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah. See, there's a lot of gray here. Pardon?
That's representational.
That's where it is over here. He's under representational. Damien Hirst, he's the dead pig guy. Michael Basquiat, or Cam Rowley, modern section of the North Carolina Art Museum. And again, let me say, there's a lot of gray area in here. My wife and I, not too long ago, I have to really drag her into the Modern Art Museum because she comes out mad. She's not an artist, and she's just honest. She's just very honest, and she says, those people are, my language, she said, but her sentiment, those people are preaching at me. If you want to get the real sentiment, you have to throw a couple F-bombs in front of that. These people are blankly going, preaching at me. And she's exactly correct, because that's what modern art is all about. Modern art is mind-focused. Art is communication. They are preaching at you, whereas visual artists are visualing at you. Here's a picture. What do you think? Do you like it? Does your brain do a little happy dance when it looks at this? Most of this stuff, as I say up here, is socio-political in content. very preachy, very propagandistic. That's my earlier title, the fight between beauty and propaganda. The modern artists, quote unquote, the modern artists are full of preaching. They are. It's propaganda. Because they don't believe that visual is of any real value. In fact, ironically, they call this pretty stuff over here, they would call my stuff. In other words, like the Visual Art Exchange in Raleigh, they would put my artwork in the category of decorative. Oh, Dan Nelson, he's a nice guy. See, they aren't here tonight, so they still think I'm a nice guy. they say, Dan Nelson, oh yes, he does decorative art. He does decorative art. By which they mean he does pretty stuff that looks nice hanging in your living room.
So their focus is ugly?
How many hear an offense in that? No, that's a put down. Here's the irony that most motels and business offices you go in today, what are they actually using for decoration? No. Completely non-objective abstract stuff. And I don't mind. I mean, I wish some hotel would buy all my abstracts. Are you with me? So that's just kind of a funny idea. They call my stuff decorative, and yet the real decorative stuff in our generation is this kind of stuff. And I like this kind of stuff, no problem. But you understand, this, you can tell from my paintings that I'm striving for beauty. There's balance, tension, all those good elements of design are supposed to be. Now, I might have failed and done a lousy job. That's possible. But you can tell that I'm working toward that when there's another one on the back. You buy this painting, you get 2 for the price of 1. Woo! I haven't gone through the pros and cons. Let me do, since I kind of ragged on, can I just take just a couple of minutes? I know I'm over.
Yes.
If you have to leave, feel free. Bless you. And I do know people have real deadlines. So let me take just a minute to say good things about this category. That needs to be said. Okay? No. Because there are good things. What's good about this? Number one, extremely powerful images can be created in this vein. I think of Picasso's Guernica. Okay, you might not like it, but unless you really just have a predisposed issue, it is a powerful image. Guernica, Guernic. Black and white, 11 feet wide, 8 feet tall, horse with a cone coming out. It's, in response to the Nazi bombing of Spain. Number two, human beings must be free to express their most troubling impulses. To deny this freedom creates an even more destructive impulse in society, a la Hitler and the Nazi perverted art movement. Okay, so you've got to, as much as I might disagree with Jason Craighead's approach to art, I've got to let him do it, and I've got to say, woohoo, go Jason, right? I do, and I do say that. So that to try to hem in artists is just you're just asking for an explosion if you try to put fences around artists. It's not going to work. Number three, visual artists. This is funny. It took me a long time to come to this point. Do tend to be more sensitive than the general population in every way. Now, I resisted that for years. I resisted thinking I was more sensitive because I didn't want to think like, I'm going to cry at the drop of the hat. But it took me a while to quit. We need to quit?
Thank you.
Oh, you're leaving.
Yeah.
Oh, can I go for a few more minutes? Stay. The rest of you can just a couple more minutes? You okay? If you have to leave. Thanks, Mom, Han. Appreciate it. Artists are sensitive. So in fact, like in the early modern art period, there was a lot of artists warning about the military-industrial machine, World War I, World War II. And guess what? They were right. There was a lot to be worrying. There was a lot to be depressed about. And artists really do tend to be sensitive. And that's really weird. But, you and I, as we're artists, we will see the difference between this color and that color, and we'll know what the difference is. How many have a spouse that couldn't describe the difference to save their life? They can tell there's two different colors, but they're lost. And you can say, can't you tell that that's a little yellower than that? Yeah. Are you with me? And to artists, we're like, that's so obvious. We are sensitive. Musicians are aurally sensitive. Visual artists are visually sensitive. More than the normal, engineer maybe, I don't know. Okay? Number four, self-expression can be healthy for the artist. And you can read the cons, I already talked about it. Number one, in this non-objective category. So again, here's my hat's off to Jason Craighead and his plan. People must be jarred out of their comfortable categories. The concept of beauty is always evolving. So I always, when I describe Jason's artwork as ugly, which by the way, he's trying to be ugly, so he wouldn't use that word, but I mean, it's a very, very studied, very, very careful ugliness. I mean, so that it really looks like a mess. And it's a wonder he can get that much mess on one canvas. But I celebrate his experimentation, and I hesitate, even though I'm babbling forth tonight like I believe everything I'm saying with me. I hesitate to judge it and say, it's ugly, because maybe in 20 years I might go, well, you know what, there's a beauty there that I didn't see. That's very possible, very possible. Because the stuff even that I do today, 100 years ago, before Mondrian, say 120 years ago, 130 years ago, sorry, people would have said, your paintings are ugly. Well, I don't think they're ugly, but there may be a beauty here that they couldn't see at the time. So there is, we do celebrate the crazy ones among us, like the Jasons, who are willing to go out on the edges and push stuff. Now, but on the other hand, he's not trying to create beauty. So to say his beauty is evolving, he would deny that. No, I'm not about beauty, okay? But there is something to that spirit of discovery and adventure. Okay, I think that's all I need to read. All in favor say aye. Here's what I think. Is anybody hit second in charge? Second in command? No? Okay, we're officially done then. I will hang out around up here for a while and answer questions if you want to call that.
We need to put the chairs away.
Oh, we have to put up chairs? Okay, we have to put chairs away. Yes.